man 2 feet in front of you has no idea the curved dagger beneath your cloak is meant for him. You are packed shoulder to shoulder with pilgrims in a Jerusalem festival. Bodies press against both arms. Sandals scrape over stone. Somewhere ahead, someone is shouting over the noise of the crowd. To everyone around you, you are nobody. Another tired pilgrim moving toward the temple. But your right hand is wrapped around a sica, a short, curved dagger hidden flat beneath your sleeve. You belong to the Sicarii, the dagger men, one of the earliest groups we know of in the Roman world built around targeted political killing. In a few seconds, you will strike this man in plain sight. Then, you will do the last thing anyone expects. You will not run. You will scream for help. You have watched your target for days. You know the route he takes through the city. You know which men walk beside him. You know where the street narrows and the crowd becomes too dense for anyone to control. That is where you wait. You dress like everyone else because you need to become everyone else. A farmer, a tradesman, a pilgrim, nobody worth remembering. The crowd carries you forward. Your heart is hammering, but your face has to stay tired and patient. The man in front of you stops. Someone bumps your shoulder. Now you are close enough to smell the oil in his beard. Your sleeve falls back. One thrust. The man drops into the bodies around him. People shout. The crowd recoils, and you recoil with them. You point at the ground. You yell for help. You kneel beside the man you just attacked and wear the same horror as everyone else. People push toward the victim. Others fight to get away. By the time anyone thinks to search for a killer, you are only another frightened witness being carried down the street. The crowd was never your obstacle. The crowd was your escape route. That method comes from Josephus, a historian who lived through the 1st century conflict in Judea. He describes Sicarii killers entering festival crowds, striking in daylight, then joining the cries of panic around their victims. Josephus is also almost the only surviving ancient narrator who tells us about them. That matters. No Sicarii handbook, membership roll, or initiation ritual survives. Their exact structure is uncertain, so the details of your recruitment, command structure, and daily life are lost. What survives is the method, the victims, the fear, and the violent end. Your strike is one version of that method. Josephus says their first prominent victim was Jonathan, a high priest around 57 AD. Jonathan was protected, powerful, and killed in public. Josephus writes that more killings followed. But your target in the street was only the first part of the weapon. The second part began the next morning. You may be gone, but the uncertainty stays behind. Every official entering a crowd has to look at the hands around him. Every collaborator has to wonder whether the stranger brushing his sleeve is carrying a hidden blade. Josephus says the fear became worse than the killings because people expected death at any hour, as if they were living through a war. That was the Sicarii's real advantage. One attack could end a life. The uncertainty around it could change the behavior of a city. To understand why you might join a movement like this, return to Roman-occupied Judea. Rome controls the province. Roman soldiers patrol the streets. Taxes flow through a system backed by imperial force. Local elites hold power by working within that system. If you are a young man who sees those elites as collaborators, your choices look terrible. Fight Rome in the open and face trained legions, siege engines, prison, or crucifixion. Do nothing and watch the occupation continue. The Sicarii chose another path. They could not defeat a legion. They could reach one person. They did not need a battlefield. They needed a crowd dense enough to hide the approach and confuse the escape. They did not need a sword. They used the sica, the short, curved dagger that gave them their name. Sicarii means daggermen. An empire can punish an army it can see. It has a harder time punishing a stranger who disappears among thousands of pilgrims. Rebel, assassin, terrorist. The label changes depending on who is telling the story. The mechanism does not change. A concealed attacker, a public victim, a crowd that carries the news farther than the killer ever could. Your mission does not end when you leave the street. It ends when men who never saw the dagger begin changing their behavior because they believe the next one could be meant for them. But a movement built for hidden violence becomes something different when the entire country erupts. In 66 AD, revolt against Rome explodes across Judah. The Sicarii become part of a much larger war. They fight Romans, but they also fight rival Jewish factions. Even other rebels turn against them. The streets that once hid them become battle lines. In 70 AD, Rome retakes Jerusalem. The temple burns. The city that made the Sicarii's method possible is shattered. If you survive, there is nowhere left to disappear. By 73 AD, the last Sicarii stronghold is Masada, a fortress on a desert plateau above the Dead Sea. Josephus places roughly 960 men, women, and children inside. Below them, Rome sends the 10th Legion. Stand on that wall for a moment. You are no longer hidden inside a crowd. You are outlined against the sky. Below you, Roman camps sit in hard squares across the desert. A wall circles the mountain. Stone by stone, it closes every route out. Then, the ramp begins. Roman soldiers pile stone and packed earth against the side of the plateau. The slope grows higher week after week. You wake each morning and measure your remaining time in feet of dirt. The same empire that could not find your dagger in a festival crowd can now see exactly where you are. That ramp is still there. You can walk up it today. When the Romans breached Masada, Josephus says they found that the defenders had chosen death rather than capture. Some modern archaeologists doubt parts of that account. The Romans may have killed more of the defenders than Josephus admitted. The final night cannot be reconstructed with certainty. What is certain is that the Sicarii's last stronghold fell. Rome had forced the daggermen into the one kind of fight they could not win: a visible enemy, a fixed position. No crowd, no escape. Their movement disappeared, but the name you know came much later, nearly 1,000 years later. European stories spread about a group in Persia and Syria called the Nizari Ismailis. Those stories produced the word that eventually became assassin. The hashish legend is probably false, and the word's exact path into European languages remains debated. That later group got the name. The Sicarii did not. But return to the Jerusalem street where this story began. You never needed a black hood. You never climbed across a rooftop. You did not vanish in smoke. You looked like everyone else. You stepped close enough to strike. Then you screamed with the people around you and let their panic hide you. The crowd saw the victim fall. No one knew what they had seen. That was the Sicarii's weapon. Not just the dagger. The fear of the dagger you could not see, carried by a person you would never remember, striking in plain sight.